Dear friend who lives in the world beside mine, I am writing from a quiet desk where every keystroke becomes part of my public life. I will not explain our customs because you already know too much about customs from your side. Instead, I will tell you what happened today and why I am still shaking though my hands look calm. In my city, a ledger listens as faithfully as the sea listens to the shore. Every step I take is indexed with time, place, and purpose. Every purchase I make is recorded with price and reason. My jokes at lunch are tagged by topic and tone. People can search my life as easily as you search a psalm. We outlaw secrets because secrets once broke our trust. Our law is simple and blunt and heavy. If you hide, you harm. If you reveal, you belong. We call it the Open Ledger Society, and we have worn its shape for generations. I know this sounds sharp to ears that prize privacy like a warm coat. I know you worry that bright light banishes safe corners. You are not wrong to worry because light can also blind. Let me show you a day that held both rescue and regret. I woke before dawn because my father needed a blood test. A clinic had already pulled his night readings from the ledger. They flagged a pattern that our family had missed for weeks. The nurse greeted us with a summary I could never have written alone. She knew his morning walks and his salty snacks and his stubborn pride. She knew the brand of shoes that had given him blisters. The diagnosis came fast because their evidence arrived already sorted. We left with a plan and a laugh, and an overdue promise to rest. We thanked the open record, but had been nosy on our behalf. We also thanked the anonymous analyst who tuned the pattern filter last night. In our city, gratitude sits beside suspicion at the same table. By noon, I was back at work, and the ledger kept me honest there too. My salary is public, so my team trusts my motives in every meeting. My calendar shows who I meet and how often I interrupt. Clients can watch how I prepare and how I follow up. Our audits are visible, so our mistakes become lessons before they become scandals. People say our meetings are shorter because hypocrisy cannot stand for long. People also say our creativity is careful because every idea will be judged by strangers. Both sayings can be true because truth in our world is crowded with people. You might ask how romance survives a system that lists every crush. We date with filters and diffs, and we laugh more often than we cry. You can compare how two people handle late trains, cold soup and sick pets. You can review apologies with version numbers. You can see if kindness is a habit or only a costume. Surprise is rare, but sincerity becomes bright enough to touch. We hold awkward tea dates where our past messages float like subtitles on the wall. We still blush because blushing is not a secret but a signal. The ledger records the blush and moves on, and we keep talking. Some nights I miss ignorance because ignorance was soft. Other nights I bless the ledger because it saved a woman on a dark street. A stranger followed her, and the city saw it with her. Patrols moved like rain, and the stranger walked away before harm could happen. She wrote a thanks the next morning, and we all read it with coffee. She said the city felt like a friend who answered at the first ring. Our city likes to answer fast because speed is part of safety here. But speed also means we judge fast. A neighbour posted a cruel joke and lost a job by nightfall. He was sorry within minutes, but the crowd had already moved to the next target. Forgiveness takes longer than outrage in a place where everything is instant. We try to fix this with context curators who attach nuance to records. Their work is slow and careful and never finished. Our courts browse timelines like playlists. A case unfolds as if you were walking through a house and opening every door. Intent is a room with poor lighting even in a glass house. We still argue about intent more than we argue about facts. Facts have addresses here, and intent has only echoes. Children grow up with guides who teach them to speak to the ledger with dignity. My niece learned to label her jokes as jokes, so her math teacher would not panic. She learned to tag a rough day as private mood even though privacy is illegal. We'd allow a little fog for minors so they can learn to steer. At 12, the fog clears because the law treats us as full citizens. We hold a ceremony where each child signs their own audit key. They wave at the camera and promise to stand in the light. Parents cry because the light is a kind of distance. Love survives anyway because our love had practiced before the ceremony. If this sounds like a sermon, please forgive me because sermons have exits and our ledger does not. Now I must tell you about the opacity visa that I never planned to use. A visa lets one person vanish from the ledger for a single day. The citizen must state a purpose, but the purpose remains sealed. The price is a public ecology when the day is done. The cost also includes a missing chapter that people will speculate about forever. We do not issue many visas, and we debate each one like a storm. Last week, a friend called me from a station where the cameras were tired. She had left a violent home that looked polite on paper. Her ledger showed a stable marriage because terror does not always write itself down. If she moved openly, the system would alert the person she feared. She asked me to help her reach a shelter whose address is kept offline for safety. The shelter lives in the same city but outside the public map. I knew that a public record would make a beacon for the wrong lies. I also knew that hiding is a civil offence. I watched the cursor blink while I begged the law to be kind. My hand opened the visa page, and my stomach gave me the answer my mind did not want. I wrote that I needed gentleness more than rules for that single day. I vanished with her at sunrise and moved like a ghost that could still feel the wind. We took side roads because the main ones were crowded with helpful watchers. We used cash that the ledger would have turned into bright trails. She cried all en basse, and I watched the city not watching us. I felt the fierce joy of being useless to every algorithm. We reached the shelter before noon, and its door opened with a quiet nod. The staff had practice in welcoming people who did not want to be found by those who had hurt them. They made tea and asked about bruises that had never been recorded. We left work histories and school lists with a humour who promised discretion. The sun climbed, and I thought of my world that believes secrecy is the enemy. For a few hours, I believed secrecy was a small and faithful friend. By evening my visa clock was low, and my courage was lower. The city would wake from my absence like a cat hearing a drawer. I returned the way we came, but slower because my thoughts were heavy. At midnight, I reappeared, and the ledger caught me with a soft chime. The next morning, I owed the city an apology with a version number. An ambiguity ombudsman joined me to record the context I could reveal. I wrote that I used the visa to protect a person from harm. I could not name her or the shelter or the street. I could only state that my act served care rather than profit. The apology went live, and comments arrived like weather. Some citizens thanked me for showing where the law is thin. Some called me a romantic who risks fairness for feelings. Some asked for rules that would let care work in daylight. I listened to every note because listening is part of penance here. The ledger added a context card to my gap and linked essays about mercy. I felt both seen and scolded, and I suppose both reactions were honest. Would you have done the same in your world where secrecy is normal? You might say yes without thinking because you were used to closed doors. But closed doors hide harm and help in the same way. I do not know a rule that separates the two without tears. Our city prefers open doors because it remembers the harm. We banned secrets after a decade when secrecy dressed like virtue and stole like a thief. We stripped away curtains and called the wind by its name. We gave the wind a notebook and told it to write everything down. Now we read that notebook together each morning. We accept that public life is the rent we pay for safety. We also accept that safety without grace is not worth living. I wish the ledger could learn grace the way a person learns. I wish algorithms could blush when they misread a human. They do not blush, but we make them slow down when it matters. A curator attaches warnings that a scene needs context before judgment. A jury can delay its vote until new voices are heard. A school teaches children to speak careful truth and to leave room for uncertain hearts. My niece practices by telling me stories that have two honest endings. She asks which ending I believe, and I tell her to hold both. Holding both is a skill that our ledger cannot do yet. The ledger is good at the what and weak at the why. We must bring the why like water to a dry field. When a singer missed a show, the record said absence, and the crowd said lazy. Later, a curator added a note about a hospital room. The crowd returned with a softer voice and a heavier wallet. People heal faster when the city remembers to be kind. You may wonder where laughter fits in a place that records every grin. We laugh at ourselves because our system sees our clumsy sides. We joke that surprise parties ended the year the ledger went live. Then we learned a new game called delayed reveal. You set a gift to appear in the record at the stroke of 9. The person watches the clock and pretends not to count. The reveal lands, and the room fills with honest noise. Laughter does not need a secret to be bright. It needs timing and trust and a few brave fools. My father told me that the ledger saved his life, but patience gave him peace. He used to feel judged by every line of his own history. Now he writes small notes that explain a hard day in simple words. He writes that he snapped at the shock because his pain meter was high. He writes that he skipped the walk because his feet were numb. He writes that he is trying, and the city reads and nods. It helps that his doctor posts thank you notes for compliance. It helps that his neighbours post cafes with chairs that do not wobble. The ledger is a map that gains value when people leave bright crumbs for others. There are dark crumbs too, and we sweep them with care. We do not delete those crumbs because deletion steals our memory. We mark them and study why they formed. We ask if shame or need or hunger shaped them. We ask if different housing would have changed the trail. Our budgets tell their own stories when they are public. A park appears where a fence once stood because the numbers begged for play. A bus route bends because the night shift asked for a safer ride. You can watch civic choices unfold like slow music. People argue in clean daylight and spend in lines that anyone can trace. Corruption hates straight lines and goes to find another home. When I compare our lives, I think you fear silence the way we fear opacity. Your stories warn that the watcher never sleeps. Our stories warn that the lie never stops. Both watchers and liars take turns being right. The work is to keep them small and keep us human. A friend of mine builds models that guess intent with softer math. Her team studies how context clusters around decisions. They flag places where a decent person might look guilty. They call these places moral fog zones. When a fog zone appears, the model asks for human review. Reviewers come from many streets and many jobs. They pause the feed and ask for missing angles. This slows the drama, and that is the point. I wish we had invented this before my neighbour lost his job. He now runs a bakery with open books and a quiet smile. People line up not out of pity but out of trust that was rebuilt in public. He writes new chapters, and I read them when I pass his window. I buy a loaf, and the ledger notes the purchase and the grin. Both records matter because bread and joy both feed us. Today, I returned to the shelter with a basket and my heart in my throat. I could not record the visit, but I could record the reason after. I wrote that a promise brought me back to a door that was kind to a friend. The curator attached a poem about protection that schoolchildren learn here. The poem says that light is brave and shade is tender. You need both to grow a tree. I think a city is a forest, and a ledger is the sun. If the sun never sets, the leaves burn. If the sun hides too long, the roots starve. I want a cycle that makes room for rest without making room for cruelty. Maybe a world can teach us how to rest without hiding harm. Maybe ours can teach you how to share without losing yourself. We can mail each other ideas like seeds and see which ones sprout. Your letter's already changed how I speak to the record. I no longer write for the crowd alone. I write for the one person who needs a guide at 4 in the morning. I write for the one judge who will later wonder if I was kind. I write for the part of me that forgets courage when a rule looks bigger than a person. I wonder how your day looks without a ledger watching. Do your maps rely on memory more than mine? Do you feel free until a crisis arrives and then feel alone? Do you forgive faster because your mistakes do not echo? Or do you forgive slower because apologies are private and cannot teach? I suspect your world holds both gifts and traps too. Perhaps you measure character by what you do when no one will ever know. We measure it by what you do when everyone will ask why. The measures are different, and the goal is the same. We want decent lives that leave decent traces. We want bold hearts that do not break other hearts for sport. We want a common story that refuses to erase the difficult parts. I will end soon because a long letter can turn into a lecture. Before I go, I will finish the tale that began with fear. My friend at the shelter sent a message through a safe channel. She said she slept through the night for the first time in months. She said she will choose when to appear again. She said light will be a home and not a weapon when she is ready. I cried and then I laughed at the same kitchen table. The ledger recorded tears and laughter as 2 events, with one cause. It did not understand that the cause was love, but I did. I hope my apology stays online as a small lamp for others who hesitate. I hope our city builds a narrow door for compassion to pass without alarms. We can keep that door narrow and guarded and still real. We can teach children that rules are promises and promises can include mercy. When I was little, my mother told me the truth is a house with many rooms. She told me to open the windows before I judge what lives there. Our ledger keeps the windows open, and sometimes a storm blows in. We mop together, and we also watch the sunrise together. I will sleep soon, and the record will note an early night. The entry will not capture the warmth I feel for you now. It will not capture how grateful I am that a friend across worlds will read this line. If you visit my city, I will walk with you and let you ask anything. I will show you the wall of thanks where people write for strangers. I will show you the park where the budget became a swing. I will show you the corner where a mistake turned into a bakery. You will see that we are not saints and not villains. You will see that we are humans who got tired of being fooled and decided to risk being seen. You will see that our risk is still a work in progress. You will see that I am still a work in progress too. I want to be brave in the light and gentle in the shade. I want to make space for secrets that save and none for secrets that wound. I want a dial and not a switch. I want a future where the ledger grows wise and not only large. Thank you for staying with me through this long account. Thank you for letting me tell you about my day and my doubt. Thank you for believing that 2 worlds can write one conversation. I will close the letter now and leave the cursor still. from your friend who lives in the world next to yours, with steady care. Thank you for listening to my letter all the way to the end. Please tap like if this story moved you or made you think. Please subscribe so you will not miss the next message from a nearby world. Leave a comment with your thoughts about transparency and mercy in your life. If you wish to support this channel, you can donate using the QR code on the video or the link in the description. The description also includes links to other works from a very different series that you might enjoy. Take good care until we meet again, and please join me for the next episode,